Morning, everyone. Day 15, past the 2-week mark. What's up? Excuse the drones if you hear them and they bother you. They're doing some construction upstairs, so we will have to survive that nuisance. Cool. So what we're going to get into today, this is going to be the last day that we're going to chant the bija mantra, so the seed sound of ah, right? And then tomorrow we'll get into the next phonetic sort of sound of the om, which is oo, but today's going to be the last day we focus on ah. So, spend some time with it. We're also going to re-explore this concept of quality. And so what I wanted to open up our discussion with today was just a quick summary of Ivan Pavlov. So a psychologist, a social experimenter, I suppose, and he discovered and sort of opened up this idea of conditioning responses to stimulus that previously didn't elicit such a response. And so his famous experiment that demonstrates this is he took dogs and he gave dogs steak, gave them meat, and they would naturally salivate. And so this was an unconditioned stimulus and an unconditioned response, meaning if a dog sees steak, it doesn't have to be taught to salivate, it will just salivate. And then he brought a bell and he rung the bell. And that is a neutral stimulus because it doesn't generate salivation. A dog hears a bell and it means nothing to them. And so the idea was, can we get the bell, a neutral stimulus, to make a dog salivate? And that would be a conditioned response. And so what he started to do was he started to ring the bell with the steak, give it to the dog, and the dog's brain all on its own would associate the bell with steak, and the physiology of the dog, because there's a steak present, would salivate. And then he took the steak away and rung the bell, a conditioned stimulus now, and the dog would salivate because its mind would associate the bell with steak and made the assumption that a steak was nearby. And so the reason I'm sharing this idea of conditioned responses and conditioned stimulus is because, what we're doing right now is we are trying to condition ourselves to chant the om, an arbitrary sound, a neutral stimulus essentially, just like the bell, and provoke the salivation of peace, the salivation of love. And if we really get skillful at it and work to sort of create this little experiment of association within our practice, we can lean into what Neem Karoli Baba, so Krishna Das's and Baba Ram Das's guru, was expressing to his students on that day when he said, meditate like Christ. His students asked, what does that even mean? And he entered deep stillness and started to weep, right? And so his weeping out of nothing, right? That's a conditioned response. He was doing something. And for me as a practitioner, the story is very powerful. The emotional response it elicits in us when we hear it, it's sort of mystifying and provocative. But I'm very curious on what are the actual steps that this person is taking to enter such a divine or sort of a devotional space. And so then we can rely on the first story we talked about yesterday. And so let's get into that again. Essentially, there is the samurai that is enraged and the samurai that is weeping. And so why exactly is one hell and one heaven? Very obviously, when the samurai had his sword over his head and was about to sort of, slaughter the holy man, that's hell because he's murderous and lost in rage and blind in fury and obviously not in control of his awareness, so distant from his consciousness and so entangled in sort of the lowest of impulses. And so, okay, very easy to see how that's hell. And that would lead to nothing but the suffering of others and the suffering of himself. But why is the weeping heaven? And so the weeping is heaven because he had a glimpse of his true nature, good or bad. He saw himself for what he really was, or in that moment was murderous and ferocious and willing to take life for no reason at all. And even though that's negative and painful, this lines up with the Buddha's first truth. We must admit we suffer. And it's in that moment where we confess our suffering, confess our limitation, confess our weakness, confess our rage, that the path of Dharma, right, the path to experience the divine or get lost in love, as Neem Karoli Baba said, opens until we honor that truth, that we are all, we all have bitter dimensions of our character. We all have lustful or vengeful or envious thoughts, and we've done sort of grotesque things, I'm sure, in some capacity. And so until we acknowledge that the path of Dharma remains closed, we remain comfortable in our limitations, in our ignorance. And so when the samurai, because the monk was reflecting his true nature and the clarity of his mind, when the samurai saw his true form, his rage, the path of Dharma opened and he wept. And that's why this is heaven. And so the reason I'm sharing this is to elicit that profound peace, to elicit the weeping of Neem Karoli Baba, or the weeping of this figment samurai. We have to acknowledge within ourselves that there is darkness, and that once we can do that, there's a space emerges. And so it becomes very mechanical today. Before you chant the ah sound and you feel the resonance in the body, I want you to consider the samurai in rage, more so than maybe you did yesterday. And wait to see and wait to feel that character, that archetype, and your mind will naturally project yourself into that character. And it doesn't have to be so specific, but it'll do the job. And then from there, I want you to imagine the samurai weeping. And now that you know why that is heaven, because in its honesty, or in his honesty, the path to move beyond himself became possible, you will feel that as well. And so then the final question, tying this all into the Om, is that the monk represents the spaciousness that provides that experience. And the monk, when he looks into this samurai in rage or weeping in shame, but also in honesty, the monk is seeing the creative force of life. And this is the heart of the Om. This is the heart of what we are trying to attempt to understand, that all things are divine. The reason Christ could lose himself in love is because he recognized all things, demonic or angelic, beneficial or detrimental, beautiful or ugly, are the creative expression of a mysterious, incomprehensible power. And when we can enact that capacity to see everything as the artistic expression of that inconceivable power, it becomes very easy to be honest with ourselves and life, and to tolerate both the good and bad. Eventually, good and bad dissolves, duality dissipates, and we only see the world as divine. And hence, again, back to Neem Karoli Baba, that is how we lose ourselves in love. When we stop fixating on the creation, the bad samurai, the good samurai, this or that, and start appreciating that it is created by a creative force. When we start seeing the Om within the phenomenon. So I hope that sort of makes sense. And what this means for us in our practices, you're going to sit there and you're occupied with duality, right? And so we understand I need to acknowledge my darkness, my shadow, before the path to Dharma opens so I can transcend it. And so we don't have to get into our own personal story. We can leverage the biases of our cognition. So we think of the samurai instead. It's like, okay, that's sort of me. I have rage. And then like, oh, wow, I have rage, and so does everyone else. And in that moment, there will be an expansion of the heart, a sense of empathy. It's like, okay, this is part of life, and now I embrace that, and now I feel good. I feel grateful for even my rage, even my limitations. Beautiful. And so at that point, you hit this moment, this apex of peace, and then you're about to chant the Om, the Ah. And as you chant the Ah, you feel the vibration in the chest. And so the idea is this vibration is what generates all of this experience. And you start to see the Om, you start to look a little bit deeper into the phenomenon of life, the phenomenon of good and bad and duality, and you start to interact with the source of its genesis. And again, the yogis believe that source, the Om, is that vibration in the body. And so if we spend time manicuring our process, building upon the quality, we become very much like Pavlov's dogs, where the bell, which meant nothing, the vibration in our chest, which meant nothing, becomes everything and causes the salivation of great peace and the salivation of great tranquility. And this is how someone like Neem Karoli Baba can sit down for 2 minutes and demonstrate this capacity, and out of nowhere start weeping in ecstasy because he is interacting with something very, very powerful. Cool. Sweet. So we're going to get into it. We're going to condition ourselves to find great peace by feeling the very ordinary sensations of humming in our bodies. And you're going to spend the vast majority of the time today on your own working with this. And so the tip would be, think of the samurai again one more time in both forms. Understand in some subtle way that that is you and that is me and that is everybody you know. And the reason it is all beautiful is because you are also the monk appreciating that this is the way of life. This is the intention of that incomprehensible creative force. And nothing can be wrong. Nothing is wrong under the umbrella of that artistic expression. And that'll move you. And once you are moved, you chant the ah and feel the vibration in your chest and understand or consider that vibration is that incomprehensible creative force. And that's sort of it. So a lot of thinking, a lot of contemplation, but this is how yogic meditation and most archaic forms of meditation really transcend simple mindfulness and simple relaxation and stress reduction and really sort of pushes us into divine realms. Groovy. Okay, let's get into this. I'll guide you through the first or the opening of our practice. Strong seated position. Wrists on knees, nice straight arms. Always paying attention to your consequences. That's going to create this positive feedback loop. And slowly straightening the arms isn't just straightening the arms is wakefulness. Keep your fingers spread wide, palms rotate up to the sky, chest is lifted, jaw is shut, shoulders relaxed. Breathe steadily and just feel your fingertips. Now bring a random finger to each thumb. And let's switch fingers today. New finger on the left hand, new finger on the right hand. Microscopic adjustments in the arms. You might want to rotate one arm or the other because the finger position affects our sense of symmetry in the body. And now slow, tranquilizing breaths. Again, breathe into the stomach and into the chest, avoid the collarbone, and pay attention to your exhale. Exaggerate the exhale. And so if we are utilizing meditation out in our lives just to reduce stress, this is all you need. You just need to trust that your exhale is everything. When you breathe in, the parasympathetic nervous system, Ida Pingala, the lunar cooling channel, when you breathe in, that channel is suppressed biologically. Every time you inhale, peace is reduced. And every time you exhale, the parasympathetic nervous system is liberated. And so feed what liberates peace. Exist longer in what generates tranquility. So that is your exhale. And so we'll spend a couple minutes. When peace arises, hands to heart center, actively memorize for 5-10 breaths. Spend time there. And then Bhumi Sparsha Mudra. And so you want to consider if peace does not arise, there's an obstacle. Something is preventing or rejecting the innate nature of existence. And what that obstructive force is your mind. You're thinking too much. You need to feel more. You need to interact with the sensations of the exhales. And it's your willingness to feel the body that will pull you out of the thought process. And as the thought process is reduced, the ripples of the mind flattened, clarified, then peace just comes. And if it doesn't, it doesn't. So let's come into Bhumi Sparsha Mudra. So quality-based practice, this is our last day just chanting the ah sound of the Om, which symbolizes beginnings. Before you chant the ah, think of the samurai, both enraged and weeping in truthfulness, weeping at the beginning of his dharmic path. Empathize with both and understand, project, that both of those characters exist within you as they exist within everyone. And if you can embrace both of those truths simultaneously, you are also the monk, holding space for the transformation. At that point, you'll feel it emotionally and cognitively and physiologically. A sense of space, a sense of truth, and a direction. Once you feel all of this, release the ah. Feel the vibration in the chest and appreciate this vibration itself is that creative force. No more chanting. Just feel the vibrations in the chest. And associate that sensation, that ordinary sensation, with the Om. That is it. This is Hridayasya Nadyas. These are the energy channels inside the heart area. It's also known as Hridaya Kasha, Akasha's space, the heart space. And so to yogis, this is the space that literally generates existence. All organisms, all beings, all planets seem to grow from the inside out. This is that creative force that, for whatever reason, generated both goodness and evil, both pleasure and stress, and the mediocrity, the valleys of mediocrity in between. And so in those moments where we can more than just tolerate, but embrace and devote ourselves to the full spectrum of life in the actual moment, the pain of your posture or the pleasure of your posture, the impatience of your mind or the eternal patience of your mind, when we can embrace both sides of the coin, we are occupying Hridaya Kasha, this heart area. And so again, conditioning a relationship to this space. Feel the buzzing and the tingling. Identify that as the Om for the last final moments of your practice today. Pay attention to your exhale. Feel the physicality of peace as you work with the breath out. And attempt to lean into Neem Karoli Baba's experience. Lose yourself in love. Lose yourself in peace. Lose yourself in the fullness of this experience, this moment, by inhabiting the spaciousness of the center of your chest. All right. And so you've entered this spaciousness. It comes with the emotions of tolerance and embrace, which evolves into gratitude and appreciation. It facilitates an ability to see past the thing and into the thing and beyond the thing. That thing, of course, being this moment. Now, the simple mechanics to facilitate these complex epiphanies, just master your exhale. And closing the class, closing the session, chant one Om, just the Ah, the opening phonetic sound, vocally, and then one true Om, O-M, after that. Feel the vibration, think of whatever thoughts stuck, whatever thoughts you thought were most beautiful. Really build your practice in these final chants, and then bring your hands to heart center, savoring and being mindful of the consequence. From here, lift your thumb knuckles to third eye center. Back to the technicality, your capacity to feel the vibratory experience. The energy, the prana that moves through the nadis, whether it's in the chest, hridayasya nadyas, or hridayakash, or in your fingertips, or in your skin. It facilitates peace within the body, within the nervous system. And a relaxed mind is an expansive mind. A relaxed mind is literally and physiologically a mind that can and is willing to embrace new and creative ideas. And so separate the skin of your thumbs from the skin of your forehead by 1 millimeter, very small space. And I find this helps us feel this vibratory experience, which can remain elusive for a long time. Feel the space in between. The gentle interaction of hairs or air pressure and airflow. And again, tying this into the whole point of this challenge, that is the Om. That vibratory buzz is the generating and pro-generating force that creates all moments. The angry samurai, the ashamed samurai, the monk, Nim Karoli Baba, Nim Karoli Baba's tears, Krishna Das and Ram Das staring at Nim Karoli Baba, the vibration that carries through our speakers, the touch of the skin hanging on your clothes, all one thing. So just take a breath, wrap your mind around that. Bring your wrists to your knees, posture one, random finger to each thumb. And as you inhabit this concept of the Om, as you feel your body hopefully a little bit more relaxed, because this is our final day with the bija mantra Ah, just appreciate beginnings. Take a few breaths, sitting, meditating on this day, new beginning. Master the exhale, so important. So you're about to end your practice. Be mindful of your state of mind. And with a breath in, open your eyes and notice that immediate shift, the trance of your practice, the sensitivity to your body, all of it is overpowered or dissolved by the external experience. So very subtle spaces, very subtle work, this game of meditation. All right, everyone. Good stuff. Conditioning a relationship to, arbitrary ideas. The more time you practice and really get involved in the quality, I will wait until the Om until I feel peace. That's the only way we can work to develop the skill, not to diminish, but also the parlor trick of Nim Karoli Baba. I will show you what Christ meditated like. Watch me cry right now in sincere ecstasy and appreciation for life. That man, if that man had a relationship to his nervous system, and in that a relationship to his mind, and like a little switch, he could turn on serious waves of gratitude, serious waves of ecstasy, because he worked towards it and he practiced intensely, or was gifted, graced for whatever reason with that ability to be so open-hearted. But I imagine all of us want that to some degree and are curious of that and what the world becomes when we become that. And so this, I think, is a more strategic approach to developing that emotional intelligence, I would say.